Alrighty, it is a special day here at Shut Up and Ball. We're also, obviously, I am Aaron, and some of you may be seeing us via YouTube, some may just be listening to us via audio. But per usual, the person who's been with me the past almost 2 hours now, dealing with this, Mr. John Harris, as always. How you doing today, John?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad we got it all figured out. It definitely has been a long time in the making 'cause we talked about doing this for a while, but I'm happy that we figured it out.
Oh man, so weird. My mannerisms, because usually we're not on video, so I'll scratch, what especially I'll do other stuff, so I gotta try not to do that off camera stuff that I typically do, like especially like I did right there. Not really centered because I like to move around stuff. Um, so the new thing we'll have to adjust to. But yeah, obviously, in case we know, and I'm assuming everyone knows, Super Bowl week. We're doing this Friday night, be out Saturday, so right before the Super Bowl. So at least we'll have some time to reflect on what's going on. But a few things happening in the NFL. John, I'll let you go first. Obviously, under the headline that, by the way, John so greatly made, Matthew Stafford traded to LA. We kind of knew that Stafford was going to be on the move. But yeah, what were your thoughts, reactions, and just how you generally feel about this?
Uh, well, I mean, it's inevitable we're going to bring it up, but my first initial thought the moment I saw the details was Deshaun Watson's price has just skyrocketed because I didn't think that based on what we were hearing about what Watson's price was going to be, that Stafford would go for as much. Because we were hearing 3 first-round picks, maybe a player for Watson.
Yep, remember that.
So then when Stafford gets multiple first rounders, I think it was a third rounder, and Jared Goff, who, I think we've seen sort of what Jared Goff can be. Maybe there's, a little bit more left in him because he's still young, but I think we've really seen his peak. Um, yeah, I was just very surprised that Stafford went for that much. Not because he's not good enough, because I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks throughout his entire career. I mean, when he first started, obviously he had Calvin Johnson, but since Megatron retired, I think that he's just been a baller on a terrible team. I mean, he's never had a run game. He's never really had a defense. They've gone to the playoffs, but even then, the last playoff berth they had, they lost to my Cowboys, which had that controversial. I think it was a holding call on defense or no call. I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah. Anyway, I think Stafford's a baller. I think he's a big upgrade over Jared Goff. Um, I think just hearing what Aaron Rodgers has said about him, your guy who everyone knows, Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be the MVP this year, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, one of the best all time. The way that he's talked about Stafford, I think, is telling, and it just makes me think when Rodgers, he does the what's his name,
Pat McAfee.
Pat McAfee. He goes on the Pat McAfee podcast all the time,
Forgot Pat
and
McAfee.
they were talking about Mahomes and all these like crazy throws that he does, and Rodgers was like, yeah, nobody in the NFL did that before Mahomes got here. And then he brought up how Stafford does a lot of that same stuff, but it just goes unnoticed because he's on a team that doesn't necessarily have the same success. So, all that being said, I think the Rams, as much as they paid here, um, I think that they won this trade just for their own sake because, I mean, they're a team that has arguably the best defense in the whole league. They have Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, and those two guys are just so impactful on that side of the ball. And then offensively, I mean, Cam Akers really started to turn it on. Their offensive line looked pretty good this year after last year, which seemed like, they were going downhill. And they still have some solid weapons on the outside, Robert Woods, and, just all the other guys, Cooper Kupp, the tight ends they got. So I think that adding Stafford with McVay's offense is a really scary sight for opposing teams because – yeah, I think that this offense is going to be opened up a lot more because of what Stafford can do. He can throw it further. He can make better reads, and just what we saw him do in Detroit. I think that he's going to look like potentially even a top 5 quarterback in a McVay offense. And I would almost compare it to like when LaFleur came to Green Bay and like Rodgers just started getting in that offense, just started clicking. Obviously, Rodgers was already amazing before that. But it just feels like Rodgers just elevated his game to a whole new level within the new offense. I feel like that's what we're going to see out of Stafford in LA.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. My first reaction wasn't, that was, the Watson's price got higher. Obviously, he's more focused on the trade. But I felt like I couldn't really tell who the winner was. So in a way, I feel like it was probably a really good trade on both ends. Like you mentioned the Stafford side, and obviously, yeah, I think Stafford as well, very great quarterback, underrated. One of my favorite watches. I thought he was gonna be bad getting into the league, but cutting me some slack. That was like, shoot, what year did he come out? Like 11, 12. That was like 8, 9 year old Aaron.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything, but still, like, and yeah, I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see him on, like you mentioned, a team that has a run game, has more than one receiver. I mean, he only had Calvin Johnson for a few years. Granted, Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones Jr. have been pretty good, but also, like you alluded to again, Sean McVay, a just a great offensive mind. So that's not all on Stafford to make the plays, and then yeah, then like I said before, the run game, and I think also for Sean McVay, in a way, he has no excuses after this. I mean, because if
Yeah.
we don't see more from him, or better, if in terms of just schematically, yeah, I mean, maybe he might be the issue. Obviously, that marriage with him and Goff, we kind of saw that fall apart rather quickly. I mean, they went to a Super Bowl together 2 years ago, but I feel like the past 2 years have shown that without a Todd Gurley, an amazing running back, generational running back before he got hurt, obviously. Even then, like the offense was limited with Goff, or so it seems when we watch to see. But for Jared Goff, I think it's a good. I guess it's a good testing point for him. He's gonna go to a Detroit team that's not gonna have much, and he's got. I think he's has an opportunity to show that he's not just a system guy like people like myself have been criticizing him for. And yeah, I think Detroit has an out after next year, so I think that's one of the reasons why they're willing to take off. Maybe that we all saw Dan Campbell. He wants to go out there and bite people's kneecaps. That's another and that was another thought I had. I was like, I don't take Goff as a guy that bites kneecaps. Just
Nope.
just the way you look at it. I mean, the big head and I don't know. I'm not going to get into he's a professional athlete. I'm not. So, but yeah, I think for Detroit it was a good haul, and it wasn't that bad of a trade for the Rams, who don't really have. They've been selling since since basically McVay's been there, and they've shown that they can make the late round picks count. And they're not going to be necessarily studs, but I mean guys like John Johnson is the safety. They've had some
Mhm.
okay linebackers. Like they're finding ways to make the other pieces work, and then also no one really talk about too is they're saving money too and getting a better quarterback. Stafford's only like 20 million, as opposed to like I've mentioned before, Jared Goff's getting paid the same amount as Aaron Rodgers, and we all know Goff is not on the same level as Rodgers. So yeah, that also gives LA more flexibility. Maybe they can go sign a few better pieces to maybe a tackle if Whitworth finally decides to retire, even though he probably won't, and he'll play till he's like 45, and no one will talk about him. Everyone will talk about Brady. But regardless, another offensive lineman or maybe a good tight end. So I don't know, but regardless, yeah, I think he definitely puts them in the playoff picture. And that division just becomes. I mean, San Francisco comes back next year. Seattle's going to be good. Um, Arizona. I mean, with Kyler, like that division's not going to be a fun division to be in. Like we thought it was stacked and like a wide open race this year. I think next year it's going to be even more wide open because now the Rams, we should see Sean McVay's offense basically like, untethered by Jared Goff. So yeah, I really like the trade for both sides. But yeah, and then back to the Rams. Obviously, they're banking on those picks will probably be late picks anyway, first round picks. So it's not really too expensive for them. But yeah, I do agree with you in regards to Watson. I'm interested to see it's going to take maybe 3, 4 first round. I mean, who knows? Now only teams like Miami and the Jets are really being talked about because they have multiple first round picks and prospects. So we'll have to see what happens going forward. Let me see. Was there anything else you wanted to mention in regards to Stafford, LA?
I think also people are underrating the fact that Stafford, he's only 32 years old, even though
Yeah,
it
it
feels like
feels like
he's
he's
been
been
in the league
there
for a long time.
10, 12
So,
years.
I mean, yeah, obviously I don't think he's going to be like Tom Brady and play until he's in his mid 40s, but at the minimum, that's probably another good 4 or 5 years that you have out of him, because we've seen a lot of quarterbacks, for the most part, are playing until they're 37, 38, and then around there is when you start to see a lot more talks of retirement. At worst case scenario, maybe he retires at like 35 and you get 3 years out of him. But even then, all the picks you traded, like you said, they should be lower because team that went to the divisional round of the playoffs with Jared Goff. They upgraded quarterback here. They still have, like you said, the flexibility with the cap now. Some draft picks they can use this year. Cam Akers is getting another year under his belt, and Sean McVay should open up the offense. So honestly, I think this team could very well compete for a Super Bowl, and I don't think there's really an excuse at this point, barring injury, because like you said, McVay. I mean, the one thing that you could really cut him some slack for was the fact that Jared Goff was the quarterback. Now you have Stafford, who, people could argue is top 10. I think he is. So you got a top 10 quarterback. You have all the other pieces that we mentioned. And like I said, there's a team that went to the divisional round. I think Stafford, at the very least, elevates them to a conference championship status in next year, because I mean, obviously we're not going to get too in depth into the offseason for a lot of these teams, but a lot of changes happening around the NFC teams with Green Bay, with New Orleans, with Tampa. Except maybe Seattle's probably not going to have a lot of changes, but there are some key pieces that are free agents on that team. So I think that the Rams, outside of a lot of the playoff teams, have a lot of stability compared to everybody else, where everyone else is going to have a lot of changes. So yeah, I think that the Rams, if they don't at least make it to the conference championship next year or within the next 2 years, probably, I think people are going to start to criticize them on the Stafford trade, because, like you said, Detroit, I mean, they definitely got a good haul. Even like I said, when I first talked about it, I did not think Stafford was going to command this kind of a price. So good on Detroit for finding a team that was willing to pay all that.
Yeah. So that helps with the rebuilds because like we've seen with Miami, really, and hopefully the Jets. We'll see. They have a lot of cap space, going forward, and they have all these picks. So it may only take a year or two to start already kind of having success. And I think Detroit also looked kind of at the big picture. Say, okay, Rodgers, in theory, is going to be here for another year or two. So Green Bay's going to be relevant another year or two. We don't know about Jordan Love, so that's when we'll so hopefully by then we'll find our stride. We'll be a good team. We can start getting the playoffs. And so doing it kind of timetable that everyone thought that the Falcons should have taken, but haven't yet. At least we haven't seen. So yeah. So we're gonna move on to our picks next. I've been trying to pull up the spreads here. Also, sorry, one last thing on Stafford. He does have 2 more years on his contract, and he's a free agent. So I think that's also kind of at least got 2 more years, and then maybe if it's still not going well, either sign a quarterback, let go of Sean McVay. So you have some flexibility there too going forward for that. So